investment climate. Just until a year, 2 years back, if I was a potential individual investor trying to invest or buy in an apartment just to stay, I was looking at probably getting an 80% funding from the bank. So that's, say, if I'm buying a property for 100, I'm putting a down payment of 20. Brokerage and transfer charges would make it to 24. Today, if I'm trying to do the same thing with the mortgage laws, at best probably I get 75% funding. So that's 25 which I need to shove in my pocket. Another 4% transfer charges, another 2% brokerage. So that essentially leaves me an capital outlay of 30%. I'm not sure how many, if I'm looking at a decent one-bedroom apartment or say or something like that, I'm looking at least 700, 900,000 or $1 million. So that's an outlay of around 300,000. Now if you're talking about affordability for the mid-income segment, which as you said, as Aline said, say people who are earning 4,000 to 10,000 or 12,000 in that range. Now arranging an upfront capital of 300 is an uphill task. Secondly, say from a transparency point of view, at best right now, if me being a professional working in feasibility studies and valuation, then the best data source kind of available right now, if I were to find out actual transactions, is say third-party source like Readon, which collects land department data. Now, that data is definitely not available to everyone. The access is limited. Secondly, the data itself, I can't really differentiate, okay, if the plot of land which is sold is for what use, how big it was, where exactly it was, I can't make any differentiation in that. So what I'm trying to say here is that, firstly, implementing laws wherein 30 to 40% you're not able to sell it in the market, that is true and it will probably help, but aren't we like, in doing all this, aren't we kind of pushing out the end user from the market? I mean that is the one that you actually want to stay in that apartment. I mean, we do need some speculators in the market. That is how we will push the market. But for an investor, probably looking up for property price on doom business is not the best time.
So the concern on the mortgage cap is that it's hitting the wrong target. It's making it more difficult for desirable owner-occupier end users, whereas the speculators, many of whom are buying with cash, they don't care so much. So who would like to comment on that from the panel? Ellie?
I'm not saying too much as usual. Basically, by introducing accommodation for the more modest, people of more modest means, we should be able to provide investor stock. So the international investor has got a ready market sitting waiting. And I don't see people of very modest means necessarily being interested in being investors in property here, because very often their money is actually going back to country of origin to support another 10 or 15 people. So end users will, I think, be slightly, not end users, end user buyers, owner occupiers. Yes, I understand what you're saying about mortgage and it's absolutely valid, but I think there's a whole investor market available for the more modest accommodation. I wouldn't see people buying those units, I would see them being rented. And that also goes back to our airlines, Emirates and the banks. You know, and National they have a lot of employees who don't have a lot of money. And it would be just the perfect world if we could find the land that was the right price to be able to build these properties for then institutions, pensions. Even our own UAE pension department could do with some stock to buy for people of modest means to rent. And in fact in Abu Dhabi we do have some very prominent sheikhs who are looking at long-term sustainable property investment to provide this information.
Thanks, Elaine. Fergal, anything to add from the bank's viewpoint?
Yeah, I'll have a crack at it. I think we sort of pull together sort of three themes that we've spoken about here. The first would be transparency. There is a perception, and much of it is exactly true, about the extent to which flipping has been driving house prices and residential prices in the Emirates is one. So let's suppose for a moment that a significant driver of the increase in house prices here is not end user demand or investor demand, but it is speculation and therefore the 40% down payment would deal with that. And let's just assume for a moment that is a large part of the problem. Job done. The collateral damage, as you pointed out, is that people who want to have 10% plus the cost of furnishing, plus transaction costs, can't get their foot on the ladder. So I totally agree with that. In fact, I was going to make that point earlier. You know, you will be moved on. So we'll look at that in a moment. Sustainable housing and affordable housing is entirely separate to that. These are people who we have decided, by virtue of the fact that we've labelled affordable and sustainable housing, are outside of the independent means to acquire their own property and through their own wages and salaries, unable to get into the mainstream residential market at the very lowest level. So we keep that aside for a moment because that requires an entirely different set of economic treatment and all this sort of stuff. So, to your point, let's suppose we never did anything other than insist that Nikhil and Imar are correct and that 40% of the down payment is a significant hurdle to stop speculators. You could look at a rent-to-own scheme. There could be a world where a rent-to-own scheme is commonplace, and so therefore, rather than you renting and then trying to accumulate equity, and by the time you have the market has moved beyond you, and it's like a kid chasing a ball, you never actually get your foot on the ladder and you continuously pay rent. And moreover, you've pushed people into the rental market, which has pushed investors into the buyer market, which continues to drive the cycle of an investor-driven market. People who have money can buy residential, people who don't cannot. So I agree with you. I don't think the 40%, by the way, is the way forward. I think the way forward is a staggered stamp duty or exit fee on when you sell your property. And we looked at, going back to Hong Kong and Singapore, and Hong Kong were quite draconian about how much they would charge you for an exit stamp if you sold property in Hong Kong Island, because to stop the speculation that's coming from mainland China because of the exploitation of their renminbi. So I think that is certainly a solution, because but again, with the lack of data to say the market is being hot because of speculation, and also there are first-time buyers or young people who are wanting to get a foot on the market as a store of wealth, or they just don't want to pay rent, because there is a very significant differential mismatch between rent cost and mortgage costs here. They are being precluded from joining the market, and the banks will be able to tell you that from mortgage activity. And I've asked the question of our own economists to say, how is mortgage activity and first-time buyer mortgage activity keeping pace with the number of units being purchased and sold? It should be a relatively simple number to tie together, right? And you would be able to see then whether mortgages are moving at the jaws are widening on those two statistics. And it should be possible to do if you wanted to do it. And then you'd be able to find out what is really driving the market. Because there is, as with all things in emerging markets, there is a perception that hot money coming in from Arab Spring countries or whatever is driving the residential market. Yeah. That may or may not be true. I'm sure it's not entirely true. But to your point, I entirely sympathise, but I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of protecting the genuine buyer of residential, small unit residential in Europe or in that.
Thanks, Fergal. Sophie, and then Chris, I'd like you to add something.
Thank you. As Elaine pointed out, we have a huge number of employees sitting around the supermarkets, hotels, malls, and we would like to get them to work on time, effectively and efficiently, and provide them with good quality accommodation. I think the challenges for owners like us is access to land at affordable rates where you can build that accommodation in the right locations. It just doesn't exist. And as I said earlier, it's very, very difficult to find land which isn't speculative, where it is a component part of the development cycle. And I think that if there are sort of zones where it's specifically zoned for that kind of use, and that it cannot get into a speculative position, then we would certainly be looking at making those levels of investment.
Yeah, and I think I'm following on from what Sophie was saying is, you could say, of course, it's about the land, but I think if there was sensible zoning, rather the same way as can you get mid-scale hotels, well, yes, you absolutely can. And from an investment stock point of view, can you get labour accommodation? Well, you absolutely can. And in fact, not that many years ago, there were some pretty good investment opportunities here around labour camps. And funnily enough, even though we had a a considerable upswing in the property market last year. That was not transferred into the construction market quite as fast. And so actually some of those labour camps became vacant. And it's difficult for people to think, gosh, you know, my rents are going up and everything, but actually, because that had not transferred into the supply chain, there was some availability coming up. We're going to see that change, but I think that the bigger picture is probably also around social infrastructure, and that's if you like, the next stage for the UAE. With a sensible zoning of land, you can also, for example, get schools to work, even private schools in Dubai, with land prices there are, and it's extremely difficult to get the numbers to work, and that's from private schools. And so, you know, it's that social infrastructure level where we've got to work a little bit harder.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions? We've got time for one or two more. At the second row here.
My name is Nitar. I'm a developer in Jordan. I just wanted to ask you, we've been talking about transparency, about Dubai or UAE, and it's very important, of course, to be transparent. But sometimes the big funds, investors, when the property is sold or disposed of, are you giving the information on yields and information on how the deal was closed? Are you making it part, or Jones JLL, for instance, when the capital markets sells a property, there's a brokerage. Is there anything everyone is doing from international investors in order to understand what was the deal?
Okay.
You know, in Spain, for instance, a shopping center sometimes was sold and no one knew what was going on. Initial deals or new deals, nothing was done. Only just a price in the newspaper. This is very important for international investors to know. Is there anything that is being done?
Okay. Thanks, Nizar, for the question. And as I understand it, you're saying what is the situation with availability of data from transactions of achieved yields or prices, and how does one go about finding out that information? Who would like to deal with that point? David, you've been sitting very quietly there.
I thought that might be a question for JLL.
Well, you could come to JLL or CBRE or Don's firm. I don't know if I'd like to say Don, but
it's more for funds.
I think Sophia will tell you.
As well. I mean, sovereign funds to make deals.
It's funny.
I think, Alan, in these markets, you do publish a very, very good document, which is your Global Transparency Index, which rates countries. I think they're about 95 in the index, and JLL publish a very good Global Transparency Index, which rates markets from high transparency. I think the US is number 1, UK number 2. The Middle East markets are there, Saudi Arabia, Jordan's in there, actually quite lowly rated. And that is a combination of the efficiency of the land registry system, the property framework, but equally what is the transactional data in the market. And I think the holy grail I helped to set up with EMA back in 2006, the first pan-GCC data bank, and we measured performance on quite a lot of EMA projects, where we actually gave capital growth and rental yields, and that gave you some rental growth, but yield transactions